On February 23, 2020, Ahmad Arberi, a 25-year-old black man, was shot to death on a suburban street.
On February 23, 2020, a murder occurred on one of the quiet streets of the Satilla Shores residential area, located in the suburbs of Brunswick, Georgia, which subsequently shocked not only the local community, but the entire country. This event might have remained another local incident if not for the video capturing the moment of the tragedy, which subsequently hit the internet and caused a huge wave of outrage. The victim was Ahmad Arberi, a 25-year-old African-American man who was reportedly just jogging in his neighborhood. He was chased and killed by two local residents, Gregory McMichael and his son Travis. The third participant was their neighbor, Roddy, who captured what was happening on his phone camera. At first glance, this murder could be explained as an accident or a civilian attempt to prevent a crime, as the suspects later claimed. But there was much more behind the events of that day. Initially, the incident aroused minimal interest from the authorities, and the investigation proceeded sluggishly, without any arrests for almost 2 months. Questions about justice, racial prejudice, and inequality in the justice system soon came to the fore. Ahmad Marquez Arberi was born on May 8, 1994 in Brunswick, Georgia. He grew up in a loving and supportive family. Since childhood, he was distinguished by his athletic training and was passionate about running. In high school, Ahmad proved himself to be a promising football player, playing for the school team, and many saw him as a talented athlete with the potential for great achievements. Those who knew him personally noted that he was a man with a strong character, disciplined and focused on self-improvement. However, after graduating from high school, his life began to take on a different, more complex character. Although he planned to continue his college studies and became interested in a career in electrical engineering, difficulties with discipline, as well as several incidents with the law, influenced his future fate. In 2013, he was arrested for possession of weapons in a school zone, and later in 2018, he was prosecuted for attempted theft. Nevertheless, despite his past mistakes, Ahmad tried to return to normal life. He loved sports and never stopped running. Running was more than just physical activity for him. It was a way to maintain internal order, to get rid of stress and troubles. Morning jogging became a familiar part of his life, and on February 23, 2020, as usual, he went outside to run along a well-known route. For those who knew him, Ahmad was a man who tried to find his way in life, despite his mistakes, and dreamed of a better future. He aspired to become an electrician and worked to achieve his goal. The environment in which Ahmad lived also played an important role in his life. The area of Satilla Shores, where he often ran, was predominantly white and fairly calm, but social and racial problems were present in the area. It is believed that his frequent jogging in the area could have aroused suspicion among local residents accustomed to a homogeneous social environment, and this was one of the reasons for the fatal conflict that led to his death. One of the main characteristics of Ahmad Arberi, which will later be heard at trials and in the media, is his sincerity and desire to live a simple but fulfilling life. In the eyes of his friends and family, he was a man who made mistakes, but always sought to improve and achieve more. However, his life will soon be unfairly and cruelly taken away. Ahmad Arberi was not just a victim of crime. His story was at the center of a national debate about racial injustice and bias. He will be remembered as a man whose life was prematurely interrupted, despite his hopes, aspirations for a better life and dreams. Sunday, February 23, 2020, was a typical morning in the Satilla Shores area near Brunswick, Georgia. The quiet, sparsely populated streets seemed sleepy. Ahmad Arberi, like many times before, went out for a morning jog, dressed in a sports uniform. He was moving along a familiar route that passed through the area where most of his acquaintances lived. At about 1 p.m., Travis McMichael, a 35-year-old former Coast Guard officer, spotted Arberi running along the street. At the time, McMichael was at home with his father, Gregory McMichael, a 65-year-old former police officer and county investigator. Travis suspected Ahmad as a suspect in recent thefts in the area. Although it is worth noting that at the time of the events, the thefts had not been confirmed, and there were no official complaints related to Arberi. Travis saw Ahmad through the window, and at that moment realized that he was the thief everyone was looking for. His father, Gregory, shared his son's suspicions. Taking a shotgun and a pistol with them, the men left the house, got into their white pickup truck, and followed the runner. According to late reports, they only intended to detain Arberi until the police arrived. Gregory called 911 and reported a suspicious person who, according to him, allegedly ran through the streets of the area. "The suspect is running away. We're going after him," Gregory said to the operator. Ahmad, noticing the car, apparently quickened his pace but did not stop. He kept running, trying to keep a safe distance from the pickup truck. At that moment, the McMichaels' neighbor, 52-year-old William Roddy Bryan, joined the pursuit. Hearing the noise and noticing the movement, Bryan ran outside and soon joined the chase in his car. He said he wanted to help detain the fugitive, although it would later become clear that his involvement played a key role in the persecution and subsequent tragedy. The McMichaels continued their pursuit in their pickup truck, repeatedly trying to block Arberi's path. Travis McMichael then jumped out of the car with a shotgun, ready for a confrontation. When they caught up with the runner at the intersection of Holmes Road and Satilla Drive, events unfolded at lightning speed. Travis gets in the way of Ahmad running with a gun at the ready. Arberi, clearly scared, tries to get around him, but McMichael rushes towards him. A short struggle ensues between them. Ahmad tries to grab the barrel of the gun, probably to disarm Travis. At this moment, the first shot is fired. Ahmad, having been wounded in the chest, does not retreat, and both men continue to fight. The second shot follows a few seconds later, and then the third, the final one. After the last shot, Ahmad weakens and falls to the ground. The video, shot by Bryan, ends at the moment when Travis stands next to the body, holding a gun in his hands. All the while, Gregory watches from the cab of the pickup truck, and Bryan continues filming.
Sir Greg McMichael, his son Travis McMichael, and William Roddy Bryan were interviewed at the scene once Glynn County Police arrived.
The McMichaels did not flee the scene. They were standing next to Ahmad's body, waiting for the police to arrive. According to Travis, his actions were justified by self-defense. In subsequent testimony, he claimed that he feared for his life when Ahmad allegedly tried to grab the gun from him. The police arrived at the scene a few minutes later. Upon their arrival, Ahmad Arberi showed no signs of life. There were 3 gunshot wounds on his body, 1 in the chest and 2 in the arm area. The McMichaels gave their statements to the police on the spot. They claimed that they were trying to detain a suspect in a crime and were forced to shoot in self-defense. "He grabbed my gun and I had to shoot," Travis McMichael repeated. Interestingly, local law enforcement agencies, given Gregory McMichael's past work in the police, did not take any decisive action at first. The case was transferred to the prosecutor's office, but no active investigative actions followed. The McMichaels remained at large, and it seemed that this event might soon disappear from the horizon of public attention. 3 months after the tragic events of February 23, 2020, the investigation into the Ahmad Arberi case barely progressed. The McMichaels were not arrested, and it seemed that the incident would be classified as self-defense and the case would quietly die down. However, everything changed dramatically when the video shot by William Bryan appeared in the public domain. This video was a key turning point that aroused public interest and activated justice. The video, which captured the last moments of Ahmad Arberi's life, was released on May 5, 2020. His appearance on the internet caused an instant reaction. The footage clearly showed Ahmad running down the road, followed by the McMichaels in his pickup truck. At the end of the video, there is a collision between Arberi and Travis McMichael, which ends with 3 shots and Arberi falling to the ground. Bryan, who was filming all this on his phone, continued filming even after Ahmad was already dead. The video spread on social media at lightning speed. Within hours of its publication, a wave of outrage and calls for justice began. Ordinary internet users, journalists, and human rights activists expressed their point of view. What was happening in the video did not look like self-defense. The McMichaels' arguments that they were trying to detain the suspect were met with doubt, especially in the context that Ahmad was unarmed and all he was doing was running down the street. This cannot be justified. The runner was unarmed, and the video shows that he was simply cornered and killed, commented one Twitter user, a post that quickly gained thousands of likes and reposts. Many activists, including those from the Black Lives Matter movement, began demanding the immediate arrest of the McMichaels. The publication of the video caused a national outcry. People from all over the United States began to express their dissatisfaction with the fact that the McMichaels remained at large for several months, despite the apparent disproportionality of their actions and the absence of a threat from Ahmad Arberi. Shortly after the video was posted, the pressure on local authorities increased dramatically. Loud calls for justice were heard from all sides, from ordinary citizens to well-known politicians and public figures. It became clear that local law enforcement agencies were under the scrutiny of a national audience, and it was impossible to ignore this case any further. We need to review all aspects of this case, including the actions of local law enforcement agencies, a GBI spokesman said after the McMichael arrest. The Brunswick prosecutor's office was temporarily suspended from the case, and the investigation was transferred to another prosecutor, Tommy DeGate. But the arrests did not end there. Public pressure continued to mount, and soon investigators also drew attention to the role of William Bryan, who not only filmed what was happening on video, but also actively participated in the prosecution of Arberi. Bryan claimed that he was just a witness and did not try to physically interfere with the events. However, his actions in the video, as well as his close ties to the McMichaels, have raised doubts.
2 months after Arberi was killed, video of the fatal confrontation was leaked. Georgia police arrested the McMichaels and Bryan.
On May 20th, 2020, William Bryan was arrested. He was accused of being an accessory to murder, despite the fact that he did not use a weapon. The investigation concluded that Bryan was actively involved in the pursuit of Arberi, blocking his way and helping the McMichaels corner the runner. Bryan was also charged with attempted perjury, as his initial testimony to the investigation did not match what was captured on his own video. Bryan's lawyers tried to present him as a casual observer who just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. However, the prosecution believed otherwise. According to the prosecutor's office, he was a full participant in the incident, and his actions contributed to the fatal outcome. This is not just a testimony. He was actively involved in this murder. He helped prosecute Arberi and was part of the conspiracy that led to his death, the prosecutor said during one of the hearings. The video's appearance has been a catalyst for a national debate about racial justice and inequality. The video showed a reality that many, especially in Black communities, perceived as a daily threat: fear of unjustified aggression from armed citizens or police officers. The incident has created parallels with cases involving police brutality, such as the murders of Trayvon Martin in 2012 and Michael Brown in 2014. With the advent of the video, mass protests began on the streets of many U.S. cities. The Black Lives Matter movement has begun to gain momentum again, calling for reforms in the justice system and an end to racial discrimination. Activists, media representatives, and public figures raised the question of why justice came into effect only after the video was published, and how great the chances of justice would have been if the recording had never become public. The video shot by Bryan proved that Arberi was killed without provocation, and that the McMichaels were pursuing him unreasonably. The publication of the recording forced law enforcement agencies and the judicial system to act, showing that under the pressure of public opinion, and with the help of media resources, even the most stalled cases can find new development. After the events of February 23, 2020, when Ahmad Arberi was shot dead in the middle of the street, local law enforcement agencies reacted relatively calmly. Despite the presence of key witnesses, including the McMichaels and Bryan themselves, as well as clear evidence of the use of firearms, there was no active action against the suspects. More than 2 months have passed without arrests or significant steps in the case, and public attention to the incident remained limited. To better understand why there have been no arrests for so long, it is important to look at the key individuals involved in the investigation and their possible motives. One of the reasons why the Arberi case developed so slowly was the involvement of Gregory McMichael, one of the suspects, in the work of local law enforcement agencies. Gregory had worked as an investigator for the Glynn County District Attorney's Office in the past and had close professional ties with local prosecutors and the police. This raised the question of a possible conflict of interest. When the police arrived at the scene, Gregory McMichael immediately began to explain his actions. In his testimony, he said that his son, Travis, fired in self-defense, and that they were only trying to detain a suspicious person who was believed to be involved in the thefts in the area. Gregory filed this as a civil arrest, acting within the framework of a Georgia law that allows citizens to detain suspects if they witnessed a crime. However, Ahmad Arberi was neither armed nor seen committing any crime on the day of the murder. Despite this, Gregory, using his connections in law enforcement agencies, probably counted on protection from prosecution. This factor played an important role in the first months of the investigation, when the police and the prosecutor's office were slow to arrest suspects. The case was initially referred to the Glynn County District Attorney's Office, but prosecutor Jackie Johnson quickly dropped it, citing a conflict of interest due to Gregory McMichael's previous work in her office. This was the first sign that the case would not be considered objectively. After Johnson transferred the case to another prosecutor's office, Waycross County, another prosecutor, George Barnhill, took over. Barnhill also found himself in a difficult situation. His son worked with Gregory McMichael, which created another conflict of interest. Despite this, Barnhill continued to work on the case for several weeks. In his letter to the police, he wrote that the McMichaels acted within the framework of Georgia law and that he saw no grounds for arrest. This statement has become a key element in delaying the investigation. The McMichael lawyers insisted that their clients acted in self-defense. They claimed that Arberi allegedly attacked Travis first when he tried to stop him for questioning. According to their version, Ahmad allegedly grabbed the barrel of a gun, which caused the shots. The McMichaels said they were forced to shoot to protect their lives. But from the very beginning, there were many inconsistencies in their stories. First, Georgia law allows civil arrest only if a person personally witnessed a crime, or there are serious grounds to believe that a crime occurred. In this case, there was no evidence of Arberi's involvement in any crime on the day of his murder. Moreover, the McMichaels did not contact the police immediately after they noticed Arberi, but instead decided to pursue him themselves. In turn, the video shot by Brian also called into question the version of self-defense. The recording clearly showed that Travis McMichael was walking towards Arberi with a weapon at the ready, creating a situation of confrontation. Arberi, on the other hand, tried to avoid a collision until he was cornered. These contradictions soon became apparent to many, especially after the video was made public, which led to significant pressure on the police and the prosecutor's office from the public. Before the video was made public, Ahmad Arberi's case went virtually unnoticed by the general public. The press did not cover it widely, and local activists did not know about the details of what happened. However, the situation changed dramatically when the video got on the internet. A wave of outrage and protest spread throughout the country. The case has become a symbol of systemic problems in law enforcement, especially in the context of race relations. It demonstrated how personal connections can influence the course of investigations, especially when it comes to representatives of former police officers or prosecutors. The question of why the McMichaels were not arrested immediately after the murder became one of the main ones in public discussions. Accusations of bias and racism have surfaced. Many argued that if Ahmad had been white and his killers black, the arrests would have occurred immediately. The Black Lives Matter movement and other human rights groups used the case to draw attention to a broader problem: the unfair treatment of African Americans in the justice system. Local authorities initially tried to silence the case, avoiding arrests and perhaps hoping that the situation would be forgotten. However, the appearance of the video and the massive public outrage that followed changed everything. The intervention of the media and activists led to the fact that the investigation was transferred to a new level, and the case gained a national scale. Delays in arrests and the passivity of local law enforcement agencies have become another vivid example of systemic problems related to racial discrimination and conflicts of interest in law enforcement agencies. The Ahmad Arberi case has shown how important the role of public opinion and transparency in the justice process is. After the release of the video shot by William Bryan on May 7, 2020, there was a significant shift in the investigation. The McMichaels, who remained at large for 2.5 months, were arrested and charged with the murder of Ahmad Arberi. The events surrounding the arrest and subsequent trials became central elements of the case, sparking national attention and debates about justice, racial discrimination, and civil rights. Gregory and Travis McMichael were detained in their homes without resistance. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation (GBI) has announced charges of murder and aggravated assault. "We acted quickly and effectively to restore justice," GBI representatives said, noting that the appearance of the video was an important factor in the decision to bring the case. The McMichael arrests caused an instant reaction in the community. Amid increasing protests and media attention, many saw this move as a victory for justice, albeit with a huge delay. However, the judicial saga did not end there. On the contrary, it was just beginning. The McMichael lawyers immediately began to build a line of defense based on self-defense. Their position was that the McMichaels acted within the framework of the law on civil arrest, and Travis fired only after Ahmad allegedly attacked him and tried to take possession of the gun. but the video recording, which captured the moment of the murder, cast doubt on this version.
Shot Arberi. Kevin Goff, who represents William Bryan, has argued that Bryan was merely a witness to the shooting.
2 weeks after the McMichael arrest on May 20, 2020, William Roddy Bryan was also detained. Although Bryan claimed that he was only a witness and did not actively participate in the prosecution of Arberi, the investigation found that he played a significant role in what was happening. The charge was that Bryan not only filmed the incident, but also helped chase Arberi by blocking his way with his car. Bryan's lawyers, like the McMichaels' lawyers, insisted that he was a bystander. However, the prosecution presented his actions as conscious complicity in the crime. The prosecutor's office claimed that Bryan was in cahoots with the McMichaels, helping them in an attempt to detain Ahmad Arberi, and thereby provoked a fatal outcome. "My client was just filming what he saw and trying to figure out what was going on," Bryan's lawyers said, trying to lower the charges. However, the evidence suggested his more active involvement, including attempts to drive Arberi on the road.
Today, the Glenn County Grand Jury did return an indictment against Travis McMichael, Greg McMichael, and William Bryan.
Shortly after the arrests, the prosecution began to form a case against all three suspects. The main charges were aggravated murder, aggravated assault, and attempted unlawful detention. Prosecutors also added charges of criminal negligence and conspiracy to commit a crime. One of the key points of the prosecution was the law on civil arrest, to which the McMichaels referred. This law, in force in the state of Georgia since the Civil War, allowed citizens to detain suspects in crimes. However, the law required that an arrest be made in the event of clear evidence of a crime, or if the person actually witnessed one. The prosecutor's office argued that the McMichaels did not have sufficient grounds to suspect Arberi of committing a crime, and their actions did not comply with the requirements of the law on civil arrest. In addition, prosecutors emphasized that Arberi did not pose any threat to the McMichaels' life, since he was unarmed and only tried to avoid meeting them. This refuted the self-defense claims that the suspects insisted on. The first preliminary hearing in the case took place in June 2020. At this stage, prosecutors presented video evidence that was key in the case, as well as witness testimony. The main task was to convince the court of the need for a full trial. During the hearing, defense attorneys continued to argue that the McMichaels acted within the law. They insisted that Arberi allegedly posed a threat to the safety of residents of the area, and the McMichaels had the right to detain him until the police arrived. However, the prosecution, relying on the video and the testimony of witnesses, questioned this version. "It was nothing more than a hunt," said one of the prosecutors, arguing that the McMichaels deliberately pursued Arberi and provoked a deadly confrontation. During the hearing, it turned out that Gregory McMichael had not witnessed any crime when he and his son began the harassment. William Bryan, in turn, was also present at the hearing, and his actions were analyzed in detail by the prosecutor's office. It is important to note that the recording he made was not the result of pure observation, as he stated earlier. The investigation concluded that he purposefully tried to prevent Arberi from escaping, thus becoming an active participant in the incident. During the hearings, attention to the case of Ahmad Arberi remained at a high level. Protests across the country, which began after the release of the video, continued during the trials. Activists and human rights organizations, such as Black Lives Matter, continued to demand a fair trial and called for a review of civil arrest laws. The Arberi case has become a symbol of the broader problem of racial injustice and bias in the U.S. legal system. Many have compared this case to other high-profile cases, such as the murders of Trayvon Martin and Eric Garner. As the hearings continued, public pressure on the court and law enforcement agencies only intensified. Particular attention was paid to the fact that the arrests of McMichael and Bryan occurred only after a mass outrage in society and the publication of the video. This called into question the transparency and fairness of local law enforcement agencies and their ability to objectively investigate incidents, especially if they involve racial issues. Under pressure from public opinion and in response to the resonance of the Arberi case, Georgia lawmakers began reviewing the law on civil arrest. In June 2021, the state officially repealed this law, which was used by the McMichaels to justify their actions. This was the first change of its kind in more than 100 years, and an important step in the fight for justice. Government officials said the case was a signal for a review of many other outdated laws and a call for better relations between law enforcement agencies and local communities.
Then took over the case, charging the McMichaels with murder and aggravated assault on May 7, 2020.
Mr. Bryan said that
as the preliminary hearings concluded, the prosecution presented a clear picture the McMichaels and Bryan purposefully harassed Ahmad Arberi without sufficient grounds, which led to his death. The video, which the prosecutor's office used as key evidence, showed that Arberi tried to avoid meeting armed men, and his death was the result of unprovoked aggression. This was not a case of self-defense. It was an act of cruelty and injustice, prosecutors said, preparing for a full trial. The trial ended with the conviction of Gregory and Travis McMichael, as well as William Bryan. They were found guilty of murder and received long prison terms. The prosecution was able to prove that their actions were not self-defense, but illegal harassment and murder. The Ahmad Arberi case has become a landmark for the fight against racial discrimination in the United States, prompting a review of old laws and systemic problems in the legal system. The public reaction to this case has shown how important the media and public opinion are to achieve justice, and demonstrated that activism and pressure can influence the results of investigations.